Hey, what's up everyone? Today we're going to be talking about how to generate more ground force when sprinting. We're going to be going in depth into some different exercises, some drills that will help you in being able to improve. That's why we are in the gym here. And also just talking about the thought process going into generating more force and better understanding how to be able to do that. I think that getting the technique down and seeing and understanding the differences between a horizontal force and a vertical force is important in being able to distinguish what are going to be the best drills for you and how to make it so you can get the most out of the drills and exercises that will make it so you can generate more force in the ground. And we'll go ahead and start the video here and just start by really getting into the different options when it comes to force production, which is vertical and horizontal. Vertical is going to be going more straight in the ground. This is just referring to sprinting is the downward force, while the horizontal is going to be more of a front to back force. And the point of this video is not going to be to debate which one is going to be more important. There's plenty of other videos that go into why vertical force is more important, why horizontal force is more important. And I do think both of them are very important, and there's a lot of data that supports both of those. But in today's video, we're not going to be debating between which one is more important, but rather just giving you the information to be able to utilize both of those to make it so you can improve. First thing that we want to understand is that force in general is a key determiner in understanding how to run faster. So there's people like Usain Bolt, the person that was able to generate the most amount of force into the ground when sprinting. Usain Bolt is also the fastest person in the world, and there's a big correlation between how fast you can run with how much force that you're able to generate into the ground. And that's where there ends up being that differentiation between the horizontal force and the vertical force, because a lot of times what we end up seeing is people will generate a lot of force into the ground, or people that are slow can really focus on generating force into the ground but still not run fast because how much time they're spending on the ground, and also a lack of acceleration principles or horizontal force that is being applied to the ground. So what you want to understand with horizontal force, and the argument of why horizontal force is more important, is because as you're accelerating, what's happening is you're going with that front to back action, and the people that are able to run the fastest are also able to generate the most amount of horizontal force during the acceleration. The thing is, as you get into top speed, now that horizontal force gets translated more into vertical force, and at the end of the day, the people that are able to reach the highest top speeds, Usain Bolt, for instance, 28 miles an hour, he was able to generate the most amount of vertical force. And so the argument for vertical force is that the fastest athletes create the most amount of vertical force. Now, again, we have to understand the rebound and some of the things that we'll get into with the exercises and how to be able to generate vertical force in a way that's going to make it so you run faster instead of just stomping the ground really hard, because we can all just stomp the ground really hard and not go anywhere. So we want to be able to understand the acceleration principles and utilize the anterior to posterior striking of the ground, and also understand the vertical force into the ground and be able to really apply both. Most of us, I would say, need to get better at generating both horizontal force and vertical force. There may be some of us that need to focus more on horizontal, or some of us that need to focus more on vertical. And this is where I think it's important to be able to distinguish that you really want to be a student of your sprinting. This is something this is why I do these videos. I just love to look more and more in depth into sprinting mechanics and the biomechanics and just understanding how to be able to run faster. And so you just don't want to end up being a follower of maybe one person or one set of ideas. You really want to be a student of the game for your sprinting mechanics, for your sprinting form. So you want to take this information, and, or at least what I would do with it is I would apply it and utilize it in the way that makes the most sense to me. So maybe there's some ideas that I'll be talking about, or some exercises or some drills that you don't like. Hopefully there are some ideas and some exercises that you do like and you can implement right away. But just being here and just watching this video, you're already setting yourself apart from a lot of the other people that are not students, right? That are not really putting the energy and the effort into understanding their own sprinting. And we can blame whatever. We could blame a coach. We could blame a situation for why we're not faster, why we're not better. You know, if only my coach gave us better drills, if only I had a better coach, or maybe a better weight program, or this or that. But all that is doing is just blaming the resources that you have available to you. So whatever those resources are, try to change your attitude, change your outlook towards it to say, how can I use these resources to help me to make it so I can get better, rather than just saying, oh, these are the reason for my downfall. Two people could look at the same situation, right? There's a story about two people go to a island, two shoe salesmen. They go to an island. One person comes back, calls his boss and he says, we have no chance. None of the people on the islands wear shoes. Other person calls back, same island, same situation, two different salespeople. The other person says, this is a great opportunity. No one here wears shoes, right? So it's the same situation, but two people look at it very differently. And I would say that's the same thing for a lot of us in how we can perceive what the situations are around us and use it as a resource to get to our goals, rather than look at it as the reason why we can't achieve our goals. So I think that Noah Lyles was a great example of this when he went into the Olympic trials hiring Ralph Mann to come and help him with his block start, right? He already has a sprint coach, already has a technique coach, already has coaches around him that are trying to help him and improve. He just won the world championship, so why would you say somebody winning the world championship needs to get better at their block start? They don't have the block start down yet. They're the world champion, right? But he took winning the Olympic championship, and he ended up doing it that importantly that he was still looking for, how can I get better? There's people that are like, oh yeah, I already have a really good coach, or they already think that they're good at this start. They don't need any more information, that are not even close to world championship level. So just to give an idea of how competitive these guys are, he already was the world's fastest person and said, I need to get better. I need to hire Ralph Mann to come out and help me with my block start to make it so I can just become that much better of a athlete. And so what we want to be able to understand is that we never know when we're going to get that right set of skills or right set of combinations to the lock, right? If there are 6 numbers that you need to open up the lock, a lot of times you have 4 or 5 numbers already. You just need that one more number, right? That's what Noah Lyles is looking for, that one more number to potentially open up the lock, make it so his block start was perfect. And so it's not about trying to say, hey, I'm here and I need to get here. A lot of guys, especially if you're watching this video, especially if you're into it still at this point, you probably have a lot of the good things that you need. You just need to find that one more small part that's going to really make a big change in your overall improvement, and then implement it, and then develop it, and then work on it. Don't just watch this and say, okay, this is great information, and then go to the next video or sit around on it. Write it down, get inspired. The time to act is when the emotions are high, when you're really feeling it, when you really got that information in you, not the next day or a week from now. So the time to act is right away. So let's get into some of the, I think, concepts that end up being the biggest when it comes to being able to understand how to generate more force in the ground. And the first thing that I typically do, and hopefully you guys can hear this okay, but what I've been really trying to teach people to do is just getting into like an ankle strength exercise. So I'll just hold on to something like this. You can use the doorway, whatever. And I'm just going to work on generating more force into the ground. And a lot of times when people do this, what they're doing is, so again, hopefully you could hear the difference, right? So I'm right here, very limited amount of force, but now I'm really forcefully, and I could even do it with my other foot down to just work on how well I can generate force down in the ground and make that more like your sprint. And you want to understand the leg cycle as well. So what I'll do is then connect that to how are we cycling the leg to make it so that I'm generating force in the ground. So I'm working on my foot strike, making it so I can understand, okay, this is the precise point of my foot that I'm generating force, and then trying to work on, and so for some people, you might be more vertical, right? Some people might not want to extend as far out. Again, this is why it's a difference between, you're a student. You want to figure out how does this best apply to me? So I think that understanding that part of the leg cycle, that part of the foot strike is critical. Another thing is just going to be leg switches. So I'm going to be here, and when doing a leg switch, what I think is important is understanding as we're transitioning, we're trying to get this leg as straight as possible as we're going to lift the other one, right? So I'm here, and I want to try to get that leg to fully extend by the time I get to here, and that's what creates that force into the ground, right? The better I can pull back and generate the most amount of force there, now that's going to help translate into running faster, right? So that's the action that really makes it so that can be a somewhat difficult exercise. And the next one's just going to be A skips and B skips. And again, this isn't going to be revolutionary in the drill themselves, but it's really how you're doing the drill. So you want to understand when you're doing the A skips, we're really trying to generate more downward force into the ground, right? So you're pulling down to make it so you are being nice and light off of the foot strike, but still forceful in the action. And then same thing with B skip. Right, I'm not moving anywhere here, so it's a little bit difficult, but we want to be forceful with the action and just working on that extension there. And understanding that the B skip is going to be a little bit more horizontal force, and the A skip is going to be a little bit more vertical force. And I'll just even work on just standing here. Like as I'm doing this, it's like this is going to be helpful in being able to understand how to generate more force in the ground. If you have a hard time being loud with your force in the ground, you're not going to be able to run nearly as fast. And then I would just apply that to the leg cycle. I like to use a curved treadmill to do single leg cycles and just work on how I'm striking the ground. And I think that's going to be an important part as well. Then you want to practice it and work on it, implement it. The things that work, the things that help, the things that make it so you can understand how to generate more force in the ground, you know, really keep those, maybe write them down and continue to work on it, continue to get better at it. And the things that maybe don't work or the things that you're already applying then are not as important. Another thing is just going to be the toe off. I've really been working on being able to just keep both feet down and just like push off of that back foot so I can get higher with that back heel. I made a couple videos where you can see as people come off, their heel's more at this position as they're coming off, which is going to make it so then the foot gets further behind, and we'll get into the mistakes here in a second. But understanding getting into this position, and this just even as an exercise, you know, you do like 20 to 30 reps of this. Again, I'm just lifting up my back leg, and then I'll even hold the top here, and that really gets into the bottom of the calf and the Achilles. And a lot of times you see those top sprinters, they have that really high calf muscle, and I've been working to try to develop that as well. And nothing is better to get that calf muscle to go higher than to really get your heel all the way up and then really pushing down into the ground, essentially like you're flexing your calf, but then hold that position and you'll really start to feel that burn, especially if you don't have the great range of motion in the toe off. And again, that's important to make it so then I can get up and through. So if I have an issue where my foot is going too far back here, so if I push off the ground with my heel too low, now my foot is not going to be able to cycle right up and through. I'm going to be back further. So just a little bit of an angle difference in the heel is going to make a big difference in how my foot comes off the ground, so then I can cycle back into my next step and then really work on the force production. Because getting into the mistakes, one of the biggest mistakes when it comes to not being able to generate very much force in the ground, and I think it's important to understand what not to do as well as what to do, right? So you can look at yourself and say, okay, these are the things that I'm making mistakes in, that I'm currently doing, that I can work to address to make it so I don't do, which should make it so then you can run faster. It's going to be limited foot height, right? So if you can't get your foot very high out in front of you, you're not going to generate nearly as much force. The higher the foot is, the more potential for force production. The lower the foot, the less amount of force production. The more you have to rely on strength. The thing is, once you have to rely more on your strength, now that's where you get more caught up in overuse injuries. There's also a smaller degree of error. So you want to be able to set yourself up for success as many different ways as you can. It's already hard to generate larger amounts of force into the ground and be able to control it. And so once you start adding in more and more difficulties, limited foot height, not very much range of motion, things like that, now it becomes even more difficult to be able to generate the same type of force in the ground. So one of the mistakes is just limited foot height, whether it's on the front side or the back side. We want to get that foot pretty high up behind you and then maintain that heel height as you come through and then get right back into foot strike. And again, just working on that leg cycle, right? So you want to be able to push off, have the range back here, then be able to cycle back forward and through. And as you cycle, don't let that heel drop and then come right back through. So what I'll see is as people are coming through here, they'll start to drop this leg, and that's what goes into the limited foot height, right? So how to correct the foot height is keep that heel up, right? Keep your heel pushing upwards into your thigh as you're coming through, so then we can come right into a leg strike instead of, as you come through, dropping that heel. Then you'd have to re-lift back up at the knee and the foot to strike the ground. If you already have a good connection here, then you'll be able to come right back up and through and strike the ground. Another thing is just going to be limited ankle action in general, right? So these are the mistakes. Foot height, the toe off position, right? So being able to get that heel off to have, or that heel all the way up to be able to toe off well there. The leg cycle, and then just not using the ankles enough, right? So as we're coming up, we want to get full dorsiflexion. Most people know about the dorsiflexion, but then as we're striking the ground, we want to be active with that toe off. So typically what I'll see is people that are not as fast, their toes are facing straight down as that foot's coming off the ground. Maybe a little bit of some action where you see the best people in the world get that full range where that toe's facing all the way back behind. So they're active in their foot, because now as you come through, you have to actively lift up the toe again and then strike, and that action continues, and that makes it so now we're active in the ankle, we're active in the knee, we're active in the hip, we're active in all the joints, and the more action that's happening, the more amount of force you're going to be able to generate. So you want to understand how to use your ankles, how to use your feet as you're striking the ground. I've made videos about that in the past, but just being able to even start to comprehend it in the leg cycle, I think is important. And then the other thing is the body position. So if we're too far forward, this is the biggest thing, is especially when you do top speed, being too far forward with the spine makes it so then my knee lift is not nearly as high. If I could be upright here, still control the core, then I can be controlled here. The other thing is getting too much like extension in the back, or almost falling back in the shoulders. And that's going to make it so then as I'm striking the ground, while I might be able to get here and even be forceful in the ground, I'm going to lose control of my foot as it's coming back behind, whether it's a range of motion thing or even a balance thing. Typically people that end up falling back here, they're not in good control of their bodies, which makes it so then they end up struggling with their top speed. So, and a lot of times that ends up going to the core, right? If you don't have a strong enough core, then you're going to start to lose yourself here as you start to gain speed. Being able to control that core, keep it nice and engaged, a lot of times helps in being able to maintain a good position within the hips. So there's a lot of different things that you got to work through here to understand how to be able to generate force, and also controlling the amount of force. Because if you're generating force in the ground, or large amounts of force in the ground, but are not able to control it, then you start to speed up and you slow down, and you speed up and you slow down. So I think there's a lot of people that are fast, right? I was talking to an athlete the other day about this, where it's like, you're fast, but you just don't know how to fully express the speed, because as you start to get faster, then you lose control, and then you end up slowing down, and then you start building back up the speed, and then you slow down. So it's a lack of expression. You can't fully express it, even though the speed is in there. It's just as you can control it, and as you get a better understanding of some of the important parts of the mechanics, then we'll be able to apply it better to the running form. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like that are watching this video as well, or hopefully you're watching this video. I know they're out there. Just is it a matter of getting exposed to the right information? And then the last thing is going to be some of the limitations when it comes to being able to generate more force in the ground. So this is going to be lower body strength, right? You got to be able to do squats, you got to be able to do lunges and be able to control it. I mean, obviously, if you can get over, 300 to 400 to me is plenty when it comes to the squat. That's a good basic understanding. You know, I usually do lunges with about 45 pounds on the barbell. So just to give an idea of the amount of weight that you want to be able to have. If it's just a lower body strength issue, I think that's the best situation to be in, because that's something that could definitely improve and get better. It's just one of those things where you got to put in the time, you got to put in the energy. It takes a little bit of time to be able to do that, get a good program. Another thing is going to be balance and body awareness. So we just were talking a little bit about that, but if you have an issue with balance, if you have an issue with body position, I would say start to work on the balance, single leg balance, just being able to land, being able to control. As that foot hits the ground, you want to be able to rebound effectively, which goes into number 3, which is ankle weakness. I think that's a big important thing as well. You got to be able to strengthen your ankles. That's obviously a big part of balance as well. Have plenty of range of motion through the ankles, and make it so you can better feel the joints in between the toes. Make sure you have a good healthy feet, good healthy toes, good healthy arches. Even if you have flat feet, you want to be strong in your arches regardless, you want to be able to have the strength there. You know, like Usain Bolt is another great example. Somebody that's very flat-footed, but fastest person ever, but he had strong enough feet to be able to absorb the ground quickly, and that's what makes him the fastest ever. So it's the combination really of generating the most amount of force in the ground while also eliminating or being very efficient with the foot contact time. So when you just generate a lot of force, the reason that some people aren't fast while just generating force in the ground is because their foot contact time is too long, which makes it so then it's harder for them to be able to maintain those large amounts of force in the ground. While the people that are the fastest, what they're able to do is be very efficient and effective with that foot strike and with that foot contact time. So when they're landing, they can transition right back off and then strike again very hard, which makes it so then they are able to continue that force production, continue to run as fast. Another thing is going to be mobility. If you lack the mobility, if you lack the range, if you have a hard time getting your foot back behind you, if you have a hard time getting extension, being able to access your hip flexors, being able to access the hamstring muscle, because that's the thing with mobility is that limits the access that you have to the muscles. So really mobility is an expression of strength. When you lack strength, then you're going to lack mobility. You're also going to lack balance. And so that's why I say, you know, the first thing was strength, because a lot of times that ends up being the thing is you just need a little bit more strength in not maybe a particular part of the body, but probably in a wide variety of different muscle groups and better understanding of some of the connections that end up working in like the core, the outside part of the hips, the muscles in the feet. All that stuff ends up being important when it comes to understanding how to have better balance and how to have better mobility. When you lack both of those, then it ends up making a big problem when it comes to being able to run fast. So you got to have great strength, you got to have great balance, you got to have great mobility, and then you also have to have great explosive power. You got to be able to jump high, you got to be able to jump far, and so being able to do those things. Some of you guys might be younger that are watching this, or maybe you're a parent to somebody that's a little bit younger, and so you're not going to be able to have as much consistent explosive power type of movements, but the more that you can expose them to jumping up and being able to jump out and those types of things, that's going to be great for the development of speed, is understanding the explosive power and also being able to rebound. So working the plyometrics, get off the ground. This is something that to me makes a lot of sense and is obvious, but it is not always as easy to consistently implement, right? So it's a thing that we know is going to help, but not always doing as consistent as maybe we could be doing. And so at least for me, again, that's definitely a case where I could be putting more conscious effort into developing the explosive power, where sometimes I get a little bit more caught up in the strength and the sprinting component and even the drills and the exercises. We're really just getting into how high can I jump, how far can I jump, let's get better at those types of things. And as that continues to develop, then I think that the speed and the amount of and the ability to generate more force will continue to develop as well. So that's going to be the end of the video. There should be a lot of great information there, things that you can apply to your sprinting. And the big thing now is, like I talked about before, is that now it's time to get to work. You should have taken some notes, or I hope you took some notes. I hope you got some great ideas from this and can use it as a way to be able to improve your speed, improve your ability to generate more force into the ground. We do have a lot of other videos like this. If this was helpful for you, go ahead and like and subscribe. That really helps us out a ton. Check out some of the other videos, and we'll talk to you soon.